Well, welcome to episode 2 of Business Jam. Yes, you're in right at the start. It really is just episode 2. So hang on in there. If you're listening, you should all be listening on YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn. If you're on Facebook, can I just ask you to do this for me, please? Go to this URL. What it means is that if you want to comment, we'll see your name come up instead of Facebook user. So we'd like to know who's abusing us or giving us good ideas or whatever. So please chat.restream.io/FB. So here we are. And today's guest, well, I think we ought to just introduce him, don't you? And then you can form your own opinion of him. Today's guest started life as a university researcher, looking at the causes of childhood cancers, and he now helps people with their presentations. Quite a shift. He's also been a lighting designer for dance companies, a playwright, actor, professional speaker, teacher, author, and fire eater. So you didn't know I was going to use that picture, did you, Simon?
I did not. I had no idea that was the picture we're going to use. That was the end of a presentation that I gave. The last thing I did before lockdowns. I was closing a conference just before Christmas. I'd done 35, 40 minutes of useful material, but I got a brief from the guys whose preference I think was they wanted a big finish so that, it's Christmas and we'll all go to the party after that. So the presentation was about how to control nerves and stuff like that. And then we set it up so that one of the guys who was running the conference came on stage and said, if your nerve control techniques work, Simon, you should be able to do something well outside your comfort zone. You've had 3 lessons on the cajon. Here is your cajon. There is an audience. Yeah, it was challenging, I have to say. But it worked, and we ended up with 35, 40 minutes of good stuff and then 5 minutes of jamming out to the drums. And it looks awesome on the video feed because it means that at the end of my presentation, the audience are literally on their feet with their hands over their heads. And if you don't know that what they're doing is clapping along to me playing the drums, it looks absolutely epic.
I bet it does. Actually, I should explain to the audience the reason I actually made that. Well, you've seen this, but I minimized that slightly to try and put it over the background rather than use the whole background. And the only letters that were visible either side of Simon's picture were B, U, and M. So we decided to use it as
with the big middle bits taken out.
yeah. Simon, bum.
Works.
But there we go. Anyway, on to more sensible things now. Just very briefly, just tell us how you got to where you are now. I mean, that's a potted history, but you're a little bit more than 21 years old.
I am
22 maybe.
I'm about to be 60. I know. It doesn't show.
No.
I started out, as you just said, as a university researcher. I did a PhD at Newcastle University and then got a job there as a researcher. And the transition, you commented that it's a big journey from researcher to presentation skills, trainer and expert. The bit that goes in the middle there is when I was a researcher, I kept getting asked the same question over and over again from the same sorts of people, politicians mainly. And I realized that either one of 2 things was true. Either politicians were really quite stupid and didn't understand what scientists were telling them, or scientists were really quite bad at explaining things to people. Actually, there's a third option, of course, which could be that both things are true. And indeed, that's actually when I started to look into it and research it, that's what it turns out to be. Politicians don't hear what they don't want to hear, but scientists are also incredibly bad at explaining things. So I started to shift the substance of my research from kind of actually doing research to more towards how to explain research. And from then, it's not such a big step from explaining to research scientists how to explain stuff to shifting to teaching anybody how to explain stuff. It's a much smaller step than it sounded.
And here you are now. You chose this title for today. So as I said before we came on air, I think it's only fair that you explain it.
Well, I wasn't expecting you to accept it, because you sent me a brief that said 1 or 2 words, and I sent you back an entire sentence, and I thought, no, he's going to throw that back in my
No,
face.
but I knew you were going to use more than 2 words. So
Creative coaches and systems businesses, it comes about because with a lot of my clients at the moment, when I'm talking to them about designing presentations, explaining things, communicating to their audiences in general, no matter how they communicate to them, they look at me like I'm a little bit bonkers and go, yeah, but that's all a wee bit sort of woo-woo and crazy. No, we're accountants. We can't be doing that. We're a local authority. We can't be doing that. We're a computer code and design program. Serious internet security stuff. We can't be doing creative. And I was banging my head against a brick wall until it was actually my wife pointed something out to me a while back. She has a degree in music, and she has seen some of Beethoven's working notebooks. And she tells a story where one of her lecturers points out that even Beethoven, arguably one of the greatest and most creative composers of all time, even Beethoven wrote some crap and had a system. And once you realize that even creative professionals have a system, you're in a position then to be able to free yourself up to go, okay, so what is that system? And then you can go, and how can I make that system design proof so I can fit it into the kind of organizations that think in very, very A, B, C, D sequential ways, where they're not in a position to be able to take risks and all of that kind of jazz.
just talking about notebooks very, very quickly, was Beethoven's system purely to do with the creation of stuff, or was it because the reason I ask is because Leonardo da Vinci was supposedly one of the world's most curious people, and he still exists somewhere, his notebooks and sketches, hundreds and hundreds of them, filled with
Nonsense.
He just went off at a tangent, and it wasn't just helicopter designs and things like that. It was also lists of people that he actually wanted to speak to. He had a to-do list of interesting people to speak to. So I wonder if Beethoven did the same.
He had a to-do list of about 5 centuries worth of material. It must have been crazy inside his head. I honestly don't know. The trigger point there was the idea that it was possible to systematize it, not what actually Beethoven's system was. That just made me realize that you could systematize it. So I can't speak to Beethoven's system. What I can speak to is what most people in the creative industries do now, which is to differentiate between, and I think this is what's sitting behind your question, to differentiate between creative process, coming up with the ideas, filling your notebook, and then picking an idea and executing on that idea. And the reason that people in the creative industries have the reputation for being flaky is that they tend not to do that last bit. They concentrate on create, and they ignore this bit. What people in systems industries need is this bit. And you execute on a creative idea in exactly the same way as you execute on your bog standard traditional idea. Once you've created a zillion ideas and put them in your literal or your metaphorical notebook, just like Leonardo did, then you just pick the one that you think is the most appropriate and run that through your project management system, just like any other damned idea. Does that make sense? It's kind of
yeah. I mean that entirely makes sense. However, another thought has just come into my head, that's the second one today.
Today, you're on fire. You're on fire.
Yeah, I'm on fire. So I do understand your point about creating an idea and fully describing it, fully specifying it, and then just running it through as you would any other idea. But I think you've just highlighted a difference there, because some people, I mean, as you know, I hate plans with a vengeance. Well, that's not quite true, but I like I would like to take an idea forward that's got some ambiguity around it, rather than have all the I's dotted and T's crossed. So is that a big differentiator between your system businesses and maybe other types of businesses?
Shouldn't be, because chaos and insecurity and uncertainty exist around any project. And in the same way as you can over specify and over detail and over Gantt chart any project, you can sure as hell to do that to a creative project, obviously. But I would argue that you don't want to over specify any kind of, honestly, let's take the absolutely blindingly obvious cliche here. We had a couple of months' notice that COVID was going to hit us. I mean, we ignored it and pretended it wasn't going to happen because, oh, that's the thing that happens to foreigners. It won't happen in the UK. We're special. But we did actually have a couple of months' notice it was going to happen. But that's
Yeah.
only a couple of months. You can't predict that kind of thing. So any kind of project management system is going to get knocked sideways at that point. And if you are over specified to the point where your PM system can't cope with quotes that, or can't cope with somebody being ill, or can't cope with roadworks on the M1, which means that one of your parts is delayed by a day, then you've over specified the project in the first place. It's nothing to do with it being creative. It's just that you're a really bad project manager and you've cut your margins and your capacity to cope too thin. I've just realized I've offended every single project manager in the
Yeah,
country.
I was just about to say, I entirely agree with you, but I think you have just offended everybody that's ever taken a Prince 2 exam or something like that. And and
But
and
surely,
and and, and you've just highlighted another point actually, which is for all the project management systems, is the differences between the strategies and the tactics.
yeah.
So yes, dealing with COVID, you could have had some strategies in there, and the tactics could have changed on a weekly basis.
Yep.
But what some people do is they like to specify everything to the nth degree, and when the tactics don't work, it all falls to pieces.
Yeah, because they are confusing what the difference is between strategy and tactics in one of two ways, I think. Either they think strategy and tactics are the same thing, they're not, or they are building their strategy out of the tactics that they have available to them. They're doing that, oh, was it Malthus? I can't remember who. If all you've got is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So they've got a set of tools, they've got Gantt charts and all of that kind of jazz. Those are the tools they use to do their project management. So therefore, that's what they use to do their project management, whether or not that is the right tool to do their project management. And the problem I have with Gantt charts, I like them for a lot of things. Don't get me wrong, I really like them for a lot of things. But they give you a false sense of precision. It suggests to you that this bit is going to be finished by 5:30 on a Friday, which means that 8:30 the following Monday, phase 2 is going to start. Real life is not like that. But there's no way in most Gantt chart software that I've seen where you can go, it'll finish about 5:30-ish on a Friday, maybe the following Thursday, maybe the Friday after that, maybe not till the following month. But in the meantime, there are some things you can start on phase 2 and muck about with them,
Yeah.
because that's the way computers are. That's the way graphics works. It's life is much more messy than that. And as you say, if you've got the strategy of this month we're going to get so and so done, don't know what the tactics are, tactics change on a week by week or a day by day basis, life is so much easier, or at
Yeah.
least less stressful.
Yeah. Actually, for anybody who's listening who may not have heard of her, there's a lady called Nadia Zeksembayeva who goes on at great length.
Bless you.
Yeah, she goes on at great length about reinvention. She talks about reinvention rather than innovation, because people have hijacked the term innovation. But she has a system of planning, and it's not an exact system of planning. Your strategy, your end point could be, we want to increase profits by 10% plus or minus 5% next year. So everything has got tolerances on it, but you have regular reviews like you might do with some of the more agile things. But as long as you're meeting your key targets, you can still you can still build this, I suppose, slightly wobbly tower and make progress in the future. Otherwise, you just stop doing things.
Yeah.
And I suggest if people are interested, they have a look at the Reinvention Society, maybe buy a book or look at her videos, because it's interesting.
And there's something we do, and I've heard of quite a lot, which builds on that for even things like key performance indicators or personal development plans and all of that kind of jazz.
Mm.
You go in to see your boss, and the boss says, "What are your ideas for the next 5 years or next year?" And you've got 5 of them, and you go, "Well, right." And it counts as a victory the next year if you have achieved any 3 of those 5,
Hmm.
because that gives you something to aim for, and it gives you that wiggle room so that if you can't manage that one because, I don't know, you've had a car crash and you can't walk for 3 weeks or something, you can make progress on the others. I'm being facetious about it, but it's the blurriness, the flexibility comes in any 3 out of 5 or any 4 out of 7, or if you see what I mean.
And for those who are into EQ and empowerment and all the rest of it, it's doing exactly that. People can make their own decisions.
Yeah. So there's a friend of mine, a guy called Jeff Nicholson, who talks about. Well, he has a whole system for this, but he talks a lot about improving self, health, wealth, yada yada. He's got a whole checklist that
Yeah.
makes a really sexy acronym. If you try and make progress on all of those things in a year, you are completely, you're hiding to nothing. But it's been a successful year if you have improved 4 of the 7, for example. I mean, so long as the other 3 haven't gone hysterically backwards, progress on 4 out of 7 and the other 3 have held the same, that still counts as a win. It doesn't matter which of those you do. So the next year, you might work on a different 4 out of the 7. Obviously, 4 out of 7 means there will be at least one overlap.
There will be an overlap somewhere.
Yes, mathematically, yes, there will be at least one overlap, but you get the point I'm trying to make.
So the burning question then is, unless we're sort of very, very keen, that's what we do in our home lives. We don't say, "Oh, I'm going to decorate the lounge, I'm going to decorate the kitchen, and this, that, and the other, and I'm going to change the engine on the car and do the garden and expect to have it all done."
Mm-hmm.
So why on earth do we do it in the workplace?
I don't know. I have a horrible suspicion it's because we do that because everybody else does that, and everybody else is doing that because we're doing that, which brings me back to this idea of putting innovation and creativity, that's the keyword creativity, into a system that can sit inside businesses that think like that. So we talk very much about once the project exists, run it through like any other good project management system. And we've just spent 5 minutes complaining that project management systems are bad and they screw up. But the principle is that you take them through. But what sits at the top of that funnel is something called the Creative Oasis. And there are things you can do to make it more likely that Creative Oasis generates ideas which can then be run through the PM funnel, through the project management funnel. Some of them are really, really, really embarrassingly simple. I mean, breathtakingly simple. Just spend 2 hours not trying to deliver something. Because when you're in delivery mode, when you're in this project management mode, when you are trying to achieve something, the logical parts of your brain are kicked in, and it's just about impossible, therefore, to kick off anything that thinks sideways. So just allow yourself and allow your team a defined time in which you can stare out of the window and go, or you get the idea. And most of it is done, it's better done with other people around, but even doing it on your own. And other simple ideas, I can't believe that people don't do them. Embarrassingly simple ideas like go for a damned walk. Change your physical environment. So I can attest to this really, really simply. I've been working for, but be careful not to tell you who they are. I've been working for an organization that provides training to local authorities. They've asked me to do some training design for them. I spent literally 2 days in my office, metaphorically banging my head against a brick wall because I didn't know what the hell to do. Gave up in the end, went to a cafe, spent a morning working in a cafe, drinking white mochas, and within 10 minutes of being in a different physical environment, And there's, you know, that Homer Simpson thing where he goes, "Dough," and you can't believe that it's taken you going to a cafe
Yeah.
because it's such a blindingly obvious idea that you should have had 2 days ago. But of course I didn't, because I'm in my office, and in my office, my brain is programmed to do things logical. It is
Yeah.
programmed to deliver. It is programmed to do the spreadsheeting. It is programmed to do the writing. But the thinking stuff has to be done, well, not has to be done, but is easier done in a different physical environment.
Yeah.
So go to the
Yeah.
cafe. Thank you,
Indeed.
1901 in Jesmond.
Yeah.
Quick plug for my favourite cafe. 1901 in Jesmond has the best white mocha in the world. Now, I
Right.
can't be sure
Simon's
about that.
taking us out. Simon's taking us all out for coffee and piles of cake then.
Oh, man,
Well,
you don't want to do that. You have one cake and that's your calorie allowance for the day gone.
well, okay, maybe. Fair enough. But yes, I mean, the ideas thing, yeah, agree entirely. The other thing that's quite good is changing your location does joggle the brain cells, but also just doing something differently helps you change perspective. So unless you're going to take an extra hour to get to work, walk a different route, catch a
Yeah.
different bus, drive a different. And the other thing that I've found is changing from different modes of thinking. So when you're banging your head against the brick wall, by going out, that's very you're very sort of focused. You're trying to whittle things down. If you go outside, what you're doing is you're in expansive mode. Your brain goes back into harvesting mode.
Yep.
So often that's why when we look at a landscape or something, an open field, we get that those ideas can come to us.
Yeah.
So you heard it here first, folks.
Go for a walk.
Simon says, "Go for a walk." If there is anybody listening, I hope there is. Um,
If there isn't,
please,
I will. If there isn't, I will hold good on that promise to take all your listeners to 1901 and buy them a coffee. If there
indeed,
is,
if there is
or
anybody listening,
better off.
and they have any ideas, wish to add anything, please just bung them in the chat, and we can put them up on the
But,
screen.
but the important thing I really want to stress in this creative cultures thing is those things that we have just talked about, such as go for a walk, go to work a different way, go to the cafe. There are rules, there are systems, there are. I can write you a PDF list of things that work like that, and which can be put into a work environment.
Hmm.
And once you put them into a work environment, things start to really unpack. And yes, it will take you 2 hours to have a couple of ideas, maybe. But what's 2 hours an entire working week when one of
It's
those
not a
ideas
lot.
can suddenly change your, well, it depends how long you work, isn't it? But it could suddenly change the profitability of
Yeah.
your company by £1,000 a week. You know, and if it's a big company, tens of thousands a
Yeah.
week.
If you get focused with ideas, it's. I mean, you can actually sounds a terrible term. Calibrate your ideas stream. It can
Yep.
be done. Firm with wetted finger in the air sort of numbering. I found in workshops that if we do some exercises to come up with really crazy ideas, um, you can come up easily with about say 50 or 60 in 10 minutes if you want to.
Yeah.
But if you want to whittle those down to something that's worth thinking about, it's a ratio, roughly speaking, of 1 to 10.
I would say, but yeah,
It's an
1 is
order
a
of
good idea.
magnitude. It's not
Yep.
necessarily 10, but it's of that order.
Yeah.
And then if you want to take something that's really worth pursuing, it's about another order of magnitude ish.
Ish. Yeah. In principle.
So for every sensible idea that's or idea that's worth investigating, it's of the order of 100 that you need to come up with.
Well, I would say that's worth investigating, you need about 10. To apply, you need 100 because investigating filters
Yeah.
down to So yeah, you probably need
Indeed.
100
But
ideas to get a real winner.
but then if you think about how much time you spend doing that, it's not an awful lot.
No, it
Some
really isn't.
companies may only need if you're dealing with products and services, some companies may only need, I don't know, 1 or 2 new products per year or per 6-month period. In service industries, you might need more because you're servicing customers and you've got internal products and processes as well.
Yeah,
But
but
it doesn't take a lot.
nope. And if you structure it so that you go, do you know what? We're going to do this at the beginning of the quarter. Boom, whatever.
Yeah.
I know team away days have got a really bad reputation. That's because most team away days are done badly. And I have a personal bee in my bonnet here. And I think the reason they're done badly is because it looks like they are easy to do. So you get people going, why should I pay £1,000 for a consultant to come and play some games for a day? Well, that's because the consultant plays the right games in the right way. And you, who don't know what you're talking about, thanks to Dunning-Kruger, think that it is okay to do it in a different way, and you screw everything up, and you've saved £1,000 but wasted everybody's day. That's a personal aside. But if you do one of these away days once a quarter, not only is it good for team morale if you're doing the kind of thing right, but you should be able to come up with that because, and I've forgotten his name, and I am so sorry for this little man in the PSA, Professional Speaking Association, but there is a guy who I've just read some research because of a presentation he did pointing out that pretty much everybody is able to be creative. It's not a special skill. You don't need to be a creative genius because pretty much everybody is a creative genius. What you need is to create these away days or oases within your working week, which allows that creativity to happen. Everybody is born creative. Just look at your average 4-year-old and how many different things can a 4-year-old do with a fork? 1, eat with it. 2, use it as an offensive weapon. 3, use it to dig the garden. 4, in the case of my children, use it to short out the electricity in the house by shoving it in the electric socket. I'm not suggesting that's a good idea, but you get the gist. And on and on and
Oh,
on.
yeah.
Have
That's a good topic for a workshop as well.
What? How many things can you do with a fork?
How many things can you do with a fork?
Or alternatively, well, that's part of one of the formal tests for inventiveness and creativity. Not a fork necessarily, but you give people an object and you go, how many things can you do with it? I thought you meant there for a second. It's an entire business jam on its own. Just exactly how destructive were Simon's children? I thought that was the topic you were going to
I think a future one could be uses for a fork, and see how many we get. But back to your point there about some everybody being creative. I mean, I don't have the research to back it up, just observational data. But I would say that every single person is creative without doubt.
Potentially.
Because I think about a story about my mattress manufacturing friends in Mexico, and what we did was created an innovation system. Now that's the key, it's system. So you have creative and innovative people, but you also have the finance people who you don't actually want to be creative because they get locked up otherwise.
I'm all in favour of creative accounting as long as it's to my benefit, Derek. That's fine.
Indeed. So you have a creative system and all these people play their part. And I was running some creative workshops, and a guy who was into IT and worked for the finance director came up to me and said, "Oh, I'm awfully sorry. I want to do some of this stuff, but I work in finance." But I sort of explained, you can have ideas. All you have to do is make sure they get to the right place. And as I explained to them all as well, you're all creative. Have you ever been at work and your wife said, "Oh, can you get us a bottle of wine or some vegetables on the way home?" And you've got home. "Where's the wine? Where's the vegetables?" "Oh, sorry, dear, the shops were shut." You've just told a story. That's you being creative.
Unless, of course, it is true that the shops were all shut. You're suggesting that somebody there's making up a story to lie.
Yeah, but let's face it. You probably have to have a very good story to satisfy the curiosity of your wife when you got home. So you create the story to suit your own ends.
Yes. So if you can come up with a story that covers your arse like that, you can certainly come up with an idea that improves the efficiency of your finance team, for example.
And let's make a really, really tenuous link here. And anybody listening might like to try and answer this. What is the really big difference, if any, between that story and a business strategy?
£5 million or a divorce. But the principle, you're absolutely right.
I'm just thinking, because the story is something that, okay, we're just giving the case of somebody and their wife, but every stakeholder can buy into it. They might have a different perspective, but all the stakeholders can buy into it. They can add their own little bits, and they can all have the same story instead of arguing about the strategy or the plan that's created in that document that most of the time keeps the door shut or stops the table wobbling.
Let me take that even further. In some of the workshops I've been doing recently, I've been using Rory's story cubes. Have you come across the story cubes?
No.
So there's people who go, I'm not creative, I'm not creative, I'm not creative. And I give them an exercise. Sorry, I'm just getting the dice out. Set of 9 dice with silly pictures on them. You just roll the dice.
Yeah.
And you make up a story based upon 9 random icons.
Yeah,
I have
done something similar with cards, but yeah, that's a great
I've
one.
never yet come across a bunch of people who were unable to do that. I'm not creative. I'm not creative. I'm not creative. All right, make up a story based upon those dice. Well, once upon a time, I was parachuting from the moon, and a dragon came past, and it landed in the apple tree. And they are nonsense stories, but they can string together completely random icons. Yeah, they are creative. They are being creative at that point. It's just that they don't think they can be creative.
Yeah, and if you really want to scare yourself, go and do comedy improv. But I've seen
cruel place to learn, Derek. I wouldn't wish that on
yeah,
anyone.
I've done it. I've done it, and I was scared. But I've seen fairly logical people go to comedy courses, and after 6 weeks, do a set on no problem at a comedy club, taking random inputs and joining them together, and it's you just got to get used to it.
Honestly, I would rather do fire eating again than stand-up comedy. Stand-up comedy is really damn scary.
The audience applauded when I did it, so I must have done something right, or they just wanted me to get off quickly. Yeah, get off quickly. But anything that makes you think like that, cubes, cards,
just to free up the creative process. So you need to get your boss off your back so that you're allowed to be creative. You need a safe working space in which you can be creative, and you need to start being creative so that you can then continue to be creative. So you spend 10 minutes playing with the cards or the dice to get the creative juices flowing, as they say, and then you gradually move into a more work-focused problem, and Bob's your proverbial. The mistake a lot of people make is that they think that the warm-up, they think that the story dice and all that kind of stuff, they think that is just an added extra where people like me are just playing.
It's
they can cut it out.
Icebreaker.
Yes.
Yeah. The horrible term icebreaker. And the other mistake I think they make is actually signposting it. We are going to do A, rather than just get people started doing it. Don't tell them what it is. Let them do it, and then go, "That was great, wasn't it?"
Yeah, so I don't use icebreakers. I'm certainly sure as hell would never label an icebreaker. Everything I do in my workshop and my training and all that kind of stuff has all got function to it. That one doubles as an icebreaker. Sorry, I'm pointing over my shoulder here to where I store the story dice. That one doubles.
That's an interesting plant. That
one.
No, it's an interesting plant. It's an icebreaker.
But it's all got the use to it, which means that you get people's and if you skip that out. And you go, here is the problem the company is facing, be creative about solving it. They can't, because their brains are still locked into the traditional X, Y, Z, A, B, C, D model of working. You need to allow people to step out of that so that they can be creative before you give them the problem. So you start with the bonkers stuff, the dice, and then you go through a halfway house where you go, here is a problem for a company similar to ours, where there's solution is blindingly obvious, they solve it, and then you get them more to the company that they are in with an easy to solve problem, and then you go to the company that they are in with the difficult to solve problem, which is where you wanted to be in the first place. but it takes a little bit of time to get there.
So here's another interesting question for you. Given that we've created the almost created the organization of the future, and this is what that you're doing with the real people who do the work. What are the messages you're telling their managers? Because a lot of them will scream and go, not that stuff. What do you tell them? How do you get them doing it?
It's not as difficult as you think, because I just float something at them, which is really simple. If what you're doing ain't working, is it sensible to carry on doing the same thing, or should you try doing something different? Now, the logical answer to that one, using their logical processes, is we should try doing something different. At the moment, what you're doing is a logical incremental change approach, and that's not working for you. What is the alternative to a logical incremental change approach? A radical approach. Okay, what if I could give you a system for a radical change that didn't scare the crap out of you? It's not a difficult sell, if you like, particularly if they come to me and say things like, we've been to X conferences, Y conferences, Z conferences, we've given presentations, they've been a waste of time because we've spent $2,000 on getting somebody there and $3,000 on accommodation, and it's cost us $5,000 in the time it takes to write the presentation. We haven't got a single booking from it. Nobody's bought anything. It's very easy to say, well, you've just spent $15,000 for a waste of time. Wouldn't you like to try something different? I cannot make the situation any worse than 15K for nothing, can I? And I'm quite an easy sell at that point. 1.5K for a day for me versus 15K for not having worked. It's something analogous to what I call the either the black hole of innovation or the cycle of non-innovation, where people justify their initial expense with a return on investment, think they can do it, don't, and they go around this little cycle where they think they can do it, they panic, they get back to the start again, they've still got to do it, so they go around again, and it just becomes a huge cost. And what you need is the big hammer or the baseball bat to break the cycle and do something different. But I like the logic of using double logic. Yeah. It's a much easier sell, I think, than breaking the spiral. Cutting the Gordian knot is always scary to people because they're just not going to do it. But using their own logic to get them to go, yeah, this isn't working. What are our other options?
Because in fact, if they're scared of being creative or at least illogical, they're actually being illogical by just plucking different things off the shelf. So it is logical. It's logical to be illogical.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Spock. But yes, you're absolutely right. It is logical to take the risk. And there are all kinds of analogies you can use. Kind of, if you jump off the cliff, you've got a 1 in 5 chance of dying. So you're not going to jump off the cliff, are you? No. But if you don't jump off the cliff, you've got a 5 in 5 chance of dying. So why the hell would you not jump off the cliff? You can use that kind of logic.
Have you got a job working for Boris Johnson then? That sounds very much like it.
No, I think you'll find that what Boris Johnson does is push other people off the cliff, because that's so much more satisfying. Oops, my politics is showing. But I do like this logic. I do get that people don't want to suddenly radically change how they think. So you take them baby steps into it by going, what you're doing is illogical. Let's try something creative as an alternative. It might not work, but you've got nothing to lose because what you're doing is not working. And it's
and you're possibly creating ideas which are always useful.
Yeah. The worst thing that can happen is that I've got a team for half a day. They create some ideas, they have a good time, and it's half a day in a big business for a small team. It's peanuts compared to the overall budget. So the worst that can happen is that I waste half a day of 6 people's time. That's it. That's the only risk. Whereas the risk of them not bringing me in is that they do more of the same, which hasn't worked for the previous 5 years.
And still costs some money.
and still cost some money. So on a cost-benefit analysis, bringing me in to redesign your presentations, for example, it's a no-brainer.
It's so worth it. Buy Simon.
Hire Simon. Hire Simon. You can't buy Simon. I am happily married. You can't buy me. You can rent.
My friend up. No, I wish you hadn't used the term rent. I've got all sorts of things going through my mind now.
You can hire
So
me.
okay. We can hire Simon. So with all these creative things going on, what are there any interesting? I wouldn't say failures, but any interesting detours that you've gone on? If there are any failures, if you can tell us without highlighting the company, that's even great.
That's that. Yeah, I was going to say, you can see the thinking out loud.
Learning points. That's what we're talking about.
Points,
not failures.
If I can think of learning points without compromising the organisation for which I was working, okay. This is quite entertaining. This is a charity who wanted a presentation as part of their fundraising. So could I completely radically redesign the way their fundraising presentations looked and worked and functioned? So we had a brief, in which case one of the things they said was, what we're doing isn't working. We recognize that. We need to change what we're doing. But also, we want to be completely different. We want to stand out and be completely different from all the other charities kicking around. That was your brief. Okay, so off I went. I did some work. I came back and I said, this is what I'm thinking. I can see how it's going to work and all this kind of jazz. And the person that had employed me, my champion within the company, within the organization, said, yeah, okay, take another day to really refine it because you're on a track that I like. And I'll organize a presentation to the SLT, to the senior leadership team on Friday morning. In I go to the Friday morning. I make the presentation. My champion in the organization goes, ta-da! And I go, ta-da! And the financial director went, that's very interesting, Simon. But to be sure it works, can you point to any other charity that is doing the same thing? And this is the point where I just slapped my head and went, no, because your brief was to be completely different from every other charity. And I can't be completely different from every other charity and give you a case study of where it has worked. Are you stupid? It's possible that I may have thought the phrase, are you stupid, without actually saying it.
I think I'm joining in with you there.
It may have flickered across my face just for a fraction of a second. The other one that's gone horribly wrong was watching a presentation. I designed it with them. And are you aware of the glitch in the, I think it is the King James Bible, where it misses, I could be wrong about which version of the Bible it is, it misses out the word not in one of the 10 commandments. So it basically says, thou shalt commit adultery, which is a bit unfortunate. But I watched somebody make a presentation that we had rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed. But he got himself kerfuffled on the day. And he literally said everything the other way around. I mean, completely literally everything was back to front. A is greater than B. He would say B is greater than A all the way through this car crash of a presentation, and nobody understood a single thing that this poor guy was saying. It was not the highlight of my career. Let's put it that way. Does that answer your question? Has it ever gone wrong? Yes, of course it has.
Yeah, I definitely think so.
There's some friends of mine, guys, marketing guys. I can give you an example of a presentation of these guys called Andrew and Pete, and they went to Los Angeles, I think it was, to do a presentation, and the theme of their presentation was "Life is a beach." That was the way they were taking.
Yeah.
So their idea was that they would throw beach balls out into the audience. Sounds like a really good idea to bounce these beach balls around. Yeah, sounds like a really good idea until you realize that no matter how hard you hit a beach ball from the stage, it is never going to go further than the front row. So they planned their entire presentation on taking questions from people who were holding the beach ball at the time.
Yeah.
Supposed to bounce around. Turns out less of a plan than you think, because the beach balls only went to the front row. So the front row got all the questions, the rest of the audience got nothing. Which brings me to one of my big kind of bête noirs, as it were. I believe you should always rehearse the tech. Always, always, always. Not just rehearse your presentation, rehearse the damned tech. Firstly, in case it's going to go wrong, but secondly, so that you are no longer worried about the presentation, no longer worried about the tech, and you can free yourself up to concentrate on the content. But people don't. They forget about that. They think it's just about the slide design and stuff, rather than all the technology that goes. And that's what had happened to the guy who got everything. I was going to say arse over tit. He just got everything completely back to front because he would not rehearse in the room. So he rehearsed in a private room, but would not rehearse on the stage. And when he got to the stage, something was slightly different to what he had expected it to be, and everything fell apart because he hadn't rehearsed the tech.
Well, there we go. So, what would be your top 3 things if someone was saying, "Oh, I want to be a bit more creative with my company or my team." What would you tell them to do?
Okay. Easy start. Do a cost-benefit analysis of what's not working. Find where things are not working, it's costing you money and it's not working, because that tells you where you should start to put your creative stuff in.
It's the cost, it's the unbenefit analysis, isn't it?
It's the unbenefit analysis.
It's the cost of not doing it.
Cost with no benefit analysis. And a corollary question to that is, ask yourself where you are on the innovation curve. Can you make changes? Can you make big output changes by only small input changes?
Yeah.
But if you flattened out on the development curve, that's the time to think about it. So that's step 1. Step 2, recognize that you need to have lots and lots and lots of creative ideas in order to get useful ideas, in order to apply those ideas. So there are going to be some really rubbish ideas that you get as well. Your job is to filter through them. And then step 3 is to create ways in the business in which that generation of ideas can happen. So create somehow this creative oasis. Remember, you don't have to make people creative. You just have to give them a safe space in which they can be creative, because everybody already is. And that could be your traditional team away day, or it could be Friday afternoons. You go, do you know what? 3 o'clock on Friday afternoon, everybody's brain is melted. Nobody is doing any proper work. We're all tidying the office because we're knackered. It's all make work. In the urgent, important matrix, we're all doing unurgent, unimportant stuff just because. Well, why not just clear the decks for an hour and a half from 3:30 till 5 o'clock and use that as a structured creative oasis, using structured processes to generate and capture ideas? Option 4, idea 4, hire me.
We didn't rehearse that at all, but that was actually quite good, because I say we've been chatting for nearly, between 45 and 50 minutes already. Yeah. So it's just about time to bring this to a close. But
partially because I'm hungry, Derek. I need to eat something.
Yes, I know you mentioned that earlier on today. You want to, but I have to. If you want to get hold of Simon, you can send him an email there. You can get him on Twitter with that handle, and you can just search for Simon on.
I do a lot of work
LinkedIn.
On LinkedIn as well. Yeah, LinkedIn is a good one. It's Simon-Raybould-Presentations. There are, I think, 3 Simon Rayboulds on LinkedIn. One of whom is a Canadian baker. One of whom I can't remember, and I've just put
unless there's a fire eater there, in which case you're stuffed.
Yeah.
But so that's how you can get hold of Simon. So
good.
Well,
I've enjoyed that.
It's been as I was going to say, it's been an absolute blast. We have some interesting people coming up in the next few weeks. We have somebody talking about graphene and 2D materials and the space elevator.
Nice.
So that and he will also be talking about non-rigid planning and backcasting, working backwards from the end thing. So that will be very interesting indeed. So
yeah, I must say, I shall
say thank you to Simon for being here, and I'll make Simon disappear just like that. So thanks for listening, watching, tuning in, whatever you'd like to call it. There will be a replay next week, and we'll be back the following week. So look out for notifications on Facebook and LinkedIn. So until next time, then, bye for now.